People think they come to learn development, but what they really want is to build a legacy.
You talk about process, funding, risk, and building the right team. But when you sit down with someone for the first time, what do they actually want?
People say, teach me development, show me how to fund a deal. But after having sat down with hundreds of people, when you get past the surface and really ask, okay, why do you want to learn development? The conversation usually shifts. It gets really quiet and they begin to think about their own family, like their kids, their parents, and realize that them wanting to start in development is so much bigger than just themselves. For example, one of our members, he really wants to have a street named after his son, and that's what gets him fired up, and that's what had him move into development. And I think it's such a cool goal. Another member said it best: generational wealth is my biggest why. It's not even for me. In my personal experience, you want to have a strong why. It's not just about how do I make more money. So when it gets really tough, and we know this business is not easy, then thinking about, oh, my kids are watching me, I'm building this for my family, that's what really gets you through anything. Most people don't just start in development for the money. They start because they want to build a legacy for their family.
So what's the difference between a W-2 worker looking to escape their job and a fix and flipper who's ready to level up?
I think a W-2 worker who's maybe working in corporate America, a lot of times it's just trying to escape. They hate that they're not in control of their schedule. They have a ceiling on their income, and ultimately know that they're making someone else rich. We've had so many conversations with folks that ended up going into the academy, and they basically said, hey, like, I know I've made my company so much money, I can do this for myself. And so what's interesting is I think there's this escape energy versus the fix and flipper investor who's already working for themselves, who's more like a scaling energy. They're like, okay, I'm already working for myself, but how can I maximize my time now? Time is finite. We all have just 24 hours. So how can I take my day and basically build something that's more scalable? There's the escape energy and there's the scaling energy, and the two are very different. I think in the very beginning, the escape energy is what gets you going. That's what gets you to pick up the phone, call a seller, and hey, are you looking to sell? But the scaling energy, that growth energy, is what actually then gets you through really taking that action continuously. And I think also it's important when you, especially when we're talking legacy, thinking about, okay, I'm doing this for my family, knowing that, oh, my kids, my wife are watching, or my husband is watching, that's what really gets you through anything. So again, I think there's the escape energy and the scale growth energy, and those two are very different, and I think that's what differentiates the W-2 going into a business of their own, like a development business, and then the fix and flipper who's already working for themselves but is looking to actually get a scalable business model going.
What does generational wealth actually look like in real estate development? Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. So I started in fix and flips as well, and a lot of people do, I think, but it's really just one house at a time most of the times. We did 5 or 6 simultaneously, but still there's not really much scalable to it because it's very difficult to scale a fix and flip business. The HGTV show, great, but it's not really a scalable business model. Breaking down generational wealth building and development, I think what differentiates the development ground up path from the fix and flips is that with development, for one, the skill set. With the skill set, you have way larger margins. You can prep a land development and walk away with a $700,000 margin in one deal. We literally had this last year happening in the academy. It was an academy deal, and another member made $700,000 in one day because he had the skill set of using zoning arbitrage. So when we talk about wealth building, I think that obviously, you're able to pull in larger chunks of money right away. You have also in development deals multiple revenue centers. So you have an acquisition fee, which is common in the wholesale world, right, or realtor side, but you still then have your developer fee if you have a sales team, the sales commission, and then you have a developer profit. So ultimately you have more revenue centers, more points to make a profit. But then also, again, you can build, for example, construction to perm. So there are better loans. So there are better funding programs out there as well, where you have land and you can get a loan. You have land and you can get a loan that's construction to then a permanent financing. You're utilizing the appraisal in the beginning of when you start. And it might be from the very beginning a 5-year deal so that when you get done with construction, it automatically rolls into long term. That product, for example, is perfect for building a rental portfolio, really doing build to rent. When you look at land development, you look at ground up, like urban infill. So you have just much larger margins, and then also, again, based on the funding, it's just way more scalable. When you're looking at building wealth and development, you're just so much better positioned. As we all know, some of the wealthiest people in the US, but pretty much globally, are real estate developers. So I think that is a testament that it's a very good wealth building vehicle. Now, you always want to diversify. I think it's important when we're talking about building wealth that you do have some rentals, like you have a portfolio that you can pass on to your kids, but also that you're, for example, also investing in really land holdings, knowing like where the city is going to grow to next. Here in Nashville, I think that's very special, knowing that the city is going to continue to grow out. So there are massive wealth building opportunities, just like here locally, but all across the country. We work with Academy folks in over 12 states, and our strongest markets are Florida, Texas, and Tennessee, and the Southeast is just so still prone to grow. So I think, especially as we've had a major wealth handover between men and women, that now women actually control the majority of wealth in the world, is literally just shifted last year. I think there's going to be a continuous growth momentum here with AI, tech coming, and all of that. And I think that development is just an amazing business model to have as part of your skill set, as part of your portfolio. And you go from there and you build legacy from there.
So you mentioned kids. How do you see development changing the family dynamic for your members?
I think massively. I love when a member shared that he's bringing his 17-year-old son to the job site. Can you imagine at 17, you learn how to read plans, talk to a contractor, understand the dynamics. Think about where this guy is going to be at 25. That's such massive knowledge at a such young age that I think it changes everything. It teaches kids at a very young age like how to work with money, how buildings are built, how communities are shaped. So I think it's massive, and I think it's just also cool when you have kids out there at sites and they know, oh, mom and dad, they built this. I think that it can change a trajectory for family massively from an education standpoint, but also from an identity standpoint. The best thing to pass down is not money, it's the ability to create it.
So how does legacy connect to the identity shift you've talked about in your past videos?
It's the same thing. You can't build a legacy if you're saying, oh, someday I'm going to develop. You have to own the identity, I am a developer. I remember the moment when Chris in our community said, I realized I am a developer, and changed on Google his wording and all that. That identity shift was core. So I think once you start shifting away from, oh, I'm a fix and flipper, I'm a realtor, I'm this and that, but to I'm a developer and realtor, I'm a developer and civil engineer, whatever it might be, like you own that identity. And once you own that identity, that's when actually you're also able to build legacy. You're not going to build legacy with, oh, someday. Someday, that's so vague and you're just still not owning it. So I think owning your identity, that step into that new identity, is what also sets you up to then build legacy. Once your identity is tied to your legacy, you can't quit. It's bigger than you.
What does legacy mean to you personally? What are you building toward?
I think it's a very interesting question because I've had such a different path coming from Germany over here, starting a development company, which that is something unthinkable in Germany. In Germany, you have to pretty much be born into wealth to truly be a developer. So in the very beginning, it was really interesting. I had to do a lot of identity work there, especially when I'm like home in Germany and talking about what I do in the US. So now over the course of 8.5, almost 9 years, it's been a really amazing journey. So I think once I realized, hey, I'm actually contributing to building this community, the city, it's a really cool feeling. And I think that anyone that's currently building, developing in Nashville, in the greater area, I think is part of that Nashville legacy. And for me, it's been cool that when family comes to visit, they get to see my houses and the streets are shaped. But it's just neat because obviously then both worlds come together. But for me also, the legacy has been the Developer Academy. It's been really cool seeing other people kick off their development journeys and being part of their journey and their story. I think it's not just my legacy, but it's also truly what we're creating here in the community. And I think that's so much bigger. And I have realized over the last few years that part is actually so much more fulfilling. It's fun to make a lot of money. It's fun to have a lot of projects. But at the end of the day, when you're really working with someone who then starts to get it, they light up, you can see it in their eyes. That's just really what I live for. I love that. And that's what also keeps me going. And I think the Academy in itself has been a very important part over the last 2-3 years, just in a community aspect that I see, okay, hey, what I'm building here, that's not just me. Other people can rinse, repeat it as well. If I've built it from scratch with literally no background, and not even having this be my first language, imagine what you could build or what you can build. So I think of legacy multifold. Yes, for my own family, but then also the city of Nashville as a whole, the US as a whole, and then the community aspects of it. So I think it's just really cool to think about the different facets. I think it's important to think about legacy because at the end of the day, when you zoom out, big picture, like what do you want to stand for? What is your legacy? That actually helps you to think bigger, but also get through some of the rough patches and the roller coaster ride, and inspires you to think more strategically of like how could you actually make the impossible happen. I don't know if you've read 10x is easier than 2x, but it talks about zooming out and that actually 10x is easier than 2x. And I think building legacy has a lot to do with that when you zoom out, it's okay, what do I want to stand for? Then you also realize, okay, hold up, that's actually easier. Development is easier than fix and flips, right? That's the 2x and the 10x.
If someone is watching this and they want to build something bigger than themselves, but they're still stuck in that someday mindset, what should they be doing right now?
Every year spent researching is another year lost. Just scrolling through Instagram, YouTube, whatnot, but you're not starting to take action. It's just like lost time. So we talked a lot about legacy here. When you think about, hey, what are my kids right now seeing? They're not seeing you building. So now if we imagine there's person one that is just researching for years, but has a desire, but the hesitation just keeps creeping up and they're just not taking that leap to just make a start. And then person two that just says, okay, all right, I have this desire, I need to do this. And you just take some kind of a start, whether it's looking for deals, talking, networking, whatnot, that eventually, that little bit of action actually gets you closer to a deal. And so that person has kids watching them build. They see the process. They see that, oh, hey, it is possible. And they walk the talk. So it just depends, what person do you want to be? Do you want to be the person that lives in fear, lives in the what ifs and researching and talking about it? Or do you want to be the person walking the talk, taking action and building something? And maybe it takes you longer, but you're doing it. So I think those are the two personalities essentially that we're looking at. So I would say someday is the most expensive word in real estate, because every day you wait, you're not just losing money, you're actually losing time, and that's the one thing that you cannot get back. And if you have kids, your kids are not waiting for you to feel ready. They're watching what you do right now. I know you're probably watching this video in the midst of doing other things, so if you're still listening, I want you to take this time, close your eyes, and think about why you're really doing this. What has you wanting to get into development, and whatever pops to mind, that's what you're doing it for. That's your legacy, and your legacy is waiting for you to start. I hope you've gotten a lot out of this video, and if you're ready to get started, check out the link in the description to download my free developer roadmap. That is my step-by-step process to get you started. If you're ready to have a conversation, DM me legacy on Instagram, and let's talk about what your first deal could look like.